Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for our regular Thursday lecture. We're thrilled to have you here with us learning more about different regions in the US, focusing specifically on the advantages of studying in the Midwest. So before we get into the video, let me just briefly introduce myself. As some of you may already know, my name is Victoria, and I'm the outreach coordinator for the Education USA Ukraine. We are, of course, part of the global network of the US Department of State committed to promoting diversity in the US higher education system and building bridges of knowledge across borders. We understand that the process of applying to the US is quite different from that in Ukraine. So we are here to help you every step of the way and answer any questions you may have from beginning to end. And today we're going to explore the advantages of studying in the Midwest. So I know that many students from around the world want to obtain a higher education degree in the United States. One of the main criteria for US university selection is obviously the location. When working on your university research, you may be interested in a specific region or state where you want to study because you find it more suitable for your educational or career goals. Well, located in the Midwest, Missouri boasts some of the top-ranked institutions offering a welcoming environment that's both safe, diverse, and obviously exciting. So, do you want to know some of the peculiarities and benefits of academic experiences and student life in the United States? Well, we're going to talk about all of these and more today. It is my pleasure to welcome our guest speakers, Thomas Mерло, Director of the International Involvement Center at the Northwest Missouri State University, who will, of course, share some pros and cons of studying in the Midwest, and his colleague Dmytro Vakulenko, who is the export manager at Kuhn Krause Company at Hutchinson, Kansas, who's going to talk about some of his experiences working in the United States. Before we get started, I would just like to encourage you all to stay proactive and ask lots of questions. We would love to hear from you, so please do not hesitate to reach out. Without further ado, Thomas, I'll turn it over to you. Please take it away.
All right, good day, everyone. My name is Thomas Mерло. I'm the director of the International Involvement Center at Northwest Missouri State University. Just so a little bit of background about me is, fun fact is I'm actually also from Europe. I grew up in France, just outside of Paris, and I moved to the US in 2007 to do my undergraduate degree. Then I did my graduate degree, and now I'm finishing up my education, and I'll be a doctor in education in May of 2025. So one more year of study, but I've done my entire study track in the US. So I'm going to be able to give you both the kind of the institution perspective, but I'm also going to give you my European perspective on, what to look for and some of the advantages that you'll be able to find in the Midwest. Because just for your information, even though I've been in the US since 2007, I've only been in Missouri. I have been in no other states. So I've traveled all around the states and all around the Midwest. I've had the chance of discovering all these states. And just for your information, I have been in every single state in the Midwest. So I've just either for work or for leisure, but I do have some fun facts about the Midwest. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into a presentation. And also, I'm going to thank him in advance, but I'm also going to give him, in the middle of the presentation, the ability to kind of introduce himself. But I've got a friend on the call, Dimitri, who's going to be able to also share his experience, but as a Ukrainian in the Midwest. So I think it's going to be fun to kind of have both perspective, both on the working and studying, but also working as a Ukrainian in the Midwest. So as the presentation was introduced, I'm going to be talking about the advantages to study in the Midwest. Of course, I mentioned some of the cons about studying in the Midwest, but you'll see there's not that many. All right. So this presentation is going to be a little bit more, it's going to be fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you on a road trip. So road trip is very Midwest-like, we like to get in the car and we like to drive around. Everything is somewhat close in the Midwest. So the journey that we're going to take together today is we're going to drive, and we're going to drive to the university. We're going to drive to Northwest through the Midwest. So the first slide that I'm going to present to you is kind of what is the Midwest, because when we talk about the Midwest, it's natural that it comes to our mind, countryside, agriculture. But when we look at the map, the Midwest is not so much the Midwest. It's more like the North Mid-East. You see all the blue states right here. There's not much about the Midwest. It's most of the states are up north, and some of them are almost on the East Coast. And when you look at the map that's just above it, a lot of people outside of the U.S. don't really know where to place those states. Where is Idaho? Where is Ohio? Where's Iowa? Where's Illinois? So all the states sound the same, but it's very hard to place them on the map. But the Midwest is a massive region of the U.S. It represents about 20% of the population of the U.S. in general. So about just under 70 million people live in the Midwest. It also represents $3 trillion US dollars in GDP. It's also massive in terms of its size, 821,000 square miles, or for European that use kilometers, it's about 2,126,300 square kilometers. When we talk about the climate in the Midwest, it's continental. We have distinct 4 seasons. You can tell in the background right now, the trees are still a little bit bare, but it's starting to bloom. We're entering the spring, and then in the summer it'll be very hot. In the fall, everything will turn red. So it is a very beautiful state as far as the climate. When we look at kind of where the most people are, Chicago is the largest city. So Chicago is in the state of Illinois, and if I put you'll see it when we start zooming into the states, but it's on the low. It's right in the middle of the Midwest. So the Midwest is still known as the America's Corn Belt. So agriculture is very present in the Midwest, on pretty much anywhere in the Midwest. It's not one part of the Midwest that's big. And corn and soy are the two main grains that are being produced in this region. And also another fun fact is in the Midwest, we have 2 different time zones. So where Dimitri and myself are located, we're in the Central Standard Time, so CST. And then if you go closer to Michigan or Ohio, you're going to be in Eastern Standard Time. So kind of going a little bit more in depth into the Midwest, and we're going to talk about the employment in the Midwest. So something that is very cool in the Midwest is we have the lowest unemployment rate nationwide. We've only 3.2%. So it's, all the people here we have this culture of working, whether it's, on the farm, whether it's in the factory. We have a lot of workers in Missouri, in the Midwest. So post-COVID, there's been a kind of a transition in the Midwest where with the IT jobs have really merged. They've come from the coast where COVID was a little bit more present and really expensive. So those companies have really merged into the Midwest where the cost of living was a little bit cheaper, where there was a lot of employment. So this is something that has kind of changed in the employment scene, and it's changed also the way our students are approaching education in the U.S. because now they're really looking at computer science, data science, cybersecurity, but not only in the cyber field, but when we look at we look at agriculture. There are a lot of jobs about, the data. And when we talk about precision agriculture, when we talk about all these things, there are some very fun jobs in agriculture that are considered IT jobs. You have to be able to fly a drone. So you have to do all these little things, precision, when irrigation, so it's very interesting how the Midwest has really embraced this IT growth. Something that we're also moving away is we used to be known as the flyover state. Flyover state stands for, it really means what it stands for, is people used to fly over us. They used to only see the Midwest from an airplane because they would go from either the East Coast to California or maybe from Canada to the South. So not many people used to travel to the Midwest, but now because of this new hub and this new attraction in the Midwest for companies, and people are starting to land in the Midwest. So whether it's in Chicago, whether it's in Minneapolis, Detroit, Cleveland, Kansas City, there a lot of attraction in the Midwest, and we're feeling it, because when you look at, I'll go a little bit more closer into cities, but it's starting to like really grow, as even the tourism is starting to grow in the Midwest. We're also talking about the Rust Belt to Tech Belt. So the Tech Belt is kind of what I was just talking about, company just moving into the Midwest, tech companies moving into the Midwest. But when we go back into a little bit of more US history, the east side of the Midwest used to be very well known for steel, the steel, the car industry. So all the way from Michigan, so Detroit, all the way down to St. Louis, there was a huge attraction for steel and car industry, and which makes a lot of sense, because this is where the Mississippi River is. So all the Mississippi has really impacted in the Midwest, because the Mississippi flows through the Midwest. The little map that I put right here, that's pink with all those little dots, this is a map of startup companies, or the cities that are very supportive of startup companies. So you can tell that in the Midwest, there's a lot of cities that are very, very supportive of startup companies. And for us, I've put the logo of the university, but for us, we're really landlocked, and we're landlocked between Kansas City, Omaha, Lincoln, Des Moines, and Ames. Those are the 5 cities that are going to be really driving a startup company in our area. And finally, agriculture remains a huge part of the Midwest. Just as a small number. I mean, it means nothing, because it's impossible to just to realize what it means. But in the Midwest, we have 127 million acres of agriculture land. So I put a little picture of what agriculture looks like in the US, but we're talking about massive machinery, and it's definitely something that is very present and creates a lot of employment in the Midwest. Also, just a small little picture on the left corner, but I've put Ukraine in the Midwest. So it represents about halfway. So Ukraine is a massive country, but when you put it in the Midwest, it only represents half of the Midwest. So that kind of puts in perspective when we talk about 127 million acres. It is massive. So now we're going to talk a little bit about living in the Midwest. I mean, living in the Midwest is something that can seem a little bit I'm not going to say boring, but when I tell people, when I travel around the world, I say, I live in the Midwest. They're like, oh, man, conservative, and it's the exact opposite. So the first thing that I want to talk about is living in the Midwest is beyond affordable. Kansas, Missouri, and Iowa are really they're in the top 6 of the cheapest state to live in the Midwest. So again, it's very comfortable. It gives you a little bit more spending power. The dollar that you earn goes a little bit further than if you were in California or New York and Texas. But in those 3 states, there's something that you get to appreciate is the wind. Those are very windy states. Here on campus, we actually have wind turbines, because this is something that we collect energy from. But this is for us a great source. But you'll see it's very interesting. In the spring, there are windy states. Chicago is known as the windy city of the U.S. We also have some very unique features. I put a little picture at the bottom, but this is called the Stonehenge in Nebraska. So for those of you who know Stonehenge in England, which is rocks that have huge story behind it, but here in the US, in the Midwest, we have our own Stonehenge, but it's made out of cars. So I just think it's all those little neat feature about the Midwest, and those are a tourist attraction. When I was talking a little bit about the flyover states, now people travel to the Midwest to see the Stonehenge, also known as the Carhenge in Nebraska. The picture that's at the very top, this is a picture of Minneapolis. also known as the Twin Cities, because we have Minneapolis and St. Paul that are connected together, makes it a very, very big suburb of massive urban area in Minneapolis. But Minnesota is known for the most haunted sites in the country. So people always think of the Salem on the East Coast with all the witches, or New Orleans as like the voodoo capital, but not at all. It's the haunted site is in Minnesota. So when we talk about the food scene, about living in the Midwest, I mean, the food scene is amazing. So it's I put it look at the underneath. It's kind of a clash of the culture. You've got a clash of new culture and old culture, and you kind of see it in the food scene in the Midwest. You have, of course, the traditional, and I've put a little map of some of the food that you find in the Midwest. Where you're gonna find, the traditional apple pie, and you're gonna find the Kansas City barbecue, and kind of the what we call the state fair food, which is the fried food, the cheese, the potatoes, the milk, the dairy. So all this is gonna be it's a mix of culture that's kind of a local culture. But because we're starting to see more people kind of merge to the Midwest, they also bring in a little bit of their food. In Kansas City, you can find great French restaurant. You can find amazing Asian food. So you're really starting to see this mix of culture between the new and the old. And I think this is very interesting. And that kind of transition into like the museum. You're starting to see a lot more new museum and music, and it makes it a very fun and engaging culture to be part of. So I always tell people, I said, if you look at the picture that's right next to this little map where you have the lake, people always tell us, oh yeah, that looks like Dubai. Not at all. This is Chicago. This is a picture of Chicago. This is kind of what the U.S. looks like. It's very urban, but you also have green and you have water. So it makes it it's very comfortable to live in the Midwest just because of that. You have all that scenery to experience. And again, this is kind of what we're talking about today is the best of our education. You're going to find some of the best university in the U.S. In the Midwest. And this is something that we're very proud of because our ranking at the university here is in the Midwest. So when we talk about ranking at university in the US, we always talk about, the Shanghai ranking, which is the top university in the world. But for us, knowing that in the Midwest, we have the best higher education in the US, just being ranked amongst those universities, and when I talk about those universities, I talk about University of Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Northwestern. Some of those like Ivy League university are in the Midwest, are in Chicago, are in Minneapolis, are in Iowa. In Ames, Iowa, we have the University of Iowa. Iowa State University. Iowa University is going to be in Coralville or Iowa City. But all these Kansas University is also, or Kansas State University is also a really good university that's not very far from us. But we really have this strong connection in higher education. This is also why living in the Midwest is amazing. And I put this little thing right here at the very top because I'm very passionate about music. I love music. It's a huge part of the culture in the Midwest. But Motown, if you're unfamiliar with Motown, this is probably one of the oldest records label in the US. And they have produced some of the most famous artists in the world. Barry White, Marvin Gaye, some of the Jackson Fives. So all this comes out of Michigan. All this music that you're probably listening to thinking it's old school, well, it is from the Midwest. So again, some of the little things that you didn't know, because now Motown, when you Google Motown, it'll say, yeah, it's in California, it's in Los Angeles. But if you look at where they started, it is in Michigan. So this is, for us, it's really some of that pride that we have in the Midwest. And ultimately, we have so much more. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to my friend Dimitri, that's going to talk a little bit about his experience in the Midwest, because I'm sure he's got plenty of things to share. He's looking
go over this. Okay, thank you, Thomas. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Dmitro Vakulenko. I'm an expert manager at Kuhn Krause Company in Hutchinson, Kansas, so right in the middle of the United States of America. And similar to Thomas, I come from Europe. I come from Ukraine, from Cherkasy, and I've been living only in the Midwest, only in Hutchinson, Kansas since 2010. But like Thomas, I also like to travel, and it's for work, for pleasure. And I've been traveling to most of the states in the United States, in USA, and have experienced the road trip, which is very popular in America. Um, so just a few words about living in Midwest. It maybe it's not as we say, sexy as living, what they show on TV when we growing up watching Hollywood movies, and they always show New York or Miami or Los Angeles, some big cities, and this how images of the country is built. But then when you travel and you see there's other layers, other parts of America, and I would say what when my family from Ukraine traveled to US, and they also visited big cities like New York and Chicago, but then when they come to see me in Kansas, where we're more rural, more agriculture state, and they say this is how they think the America looked like years ago, how USA was, when our grandparents were young. So it's more traditional America. And as I was telling to Victoria earlier today, like in this part of the United States and rural America, there's not many foreigner people. So when I came to live here, people in you go to the supermarket or you go to museum, and people hear your accent, and they're not used to hearing people with the European accent. So they ask where you're from. They're interested to know about your country, and of course, unfortunately, now everybody knows about Ukraine with the war going on. So now the local people are very sympathetic, and they ask about your friends and your family. So, but 10 years ago, not many people knew about Ukraine. So that definitely changed now. Um, so just maybe a little bit more about myself. So I grew up in Cherkasy and went to university in Kiev in Ukraine, Kiev National Linguistic University, and then graduated later in Kiev National Economic University. So I didn't study in the U.S., but I got lucky. I found the job, and the job is in agriculture. So I work in a company that makes farm equipment, and they were looking for somebody who can speak Russian and Ukrainian language, because it was the big market for our machines that made in my factory. So this is how I got find the job in the United States. And as Thomas mentioned, Midwest is very similar to Ukraine because it's very rural, a lot of agriculture, many fields. So that's why we have many farm equipment manufacturers that makes combines, tractors, and planters, and so on. So, and it's been not only used in the United States, but exported globally. It's has a good reputation as a reliable machine made in USA, and it's been used in many countries of the world. I guess that's all about my experience. What I wanted to say that just about living in the Midwest, as Thomas mentioned, it's more affordable than living in bigger cities on the coast. So you, like Thomas said, you can get more for your money, and we actually I see a trend right now with the remote work that some people from East Coast, West Coast, from California, New York, moving more into central part of U.S. because they can get a nicer house. Then the childcare, the daycare is less expensive. Food is less expensive. Maybe more quality food. So that's something that's happening right now. And of course, COVID with all the Zoom calls and Teams meetings helped to work remotely, and many people still working this way. What else? I think Thomas says there's not many disadvantages, but I would say probably one of the biggest disadvantages living in a smaller, more rural towns in the United States is the lack of public transportation. So when I moved to United States, I didn't have a car. So even though my factory is in the same city as where I lived, but I had to ask my coworker to pick me up in the morning and take me to a factory, and then take me back in the evening home. And then on the weekend, my first weekend in Hutchinson, Kansas, I decided I'm gonna walk around town just to see the town. And so I opened Google Maps and printed some of the maps, and it was before iPhone. It was a long time ago, before the smartphones become popular, I guess. So I walked around the town, and when I came Monday to work, my coworker asked me how was my weekend, and I said it was very nice. I walked to the main street, walked to this part of town, that part of town, and they were very surprised because they never walked so much. In America, people like to drive all the time, and especially like here, you don't really have a choice of not much walking distance. So one thing to consider if you go into Midwest, think about transportation or bicycle or scooter, something like that. So yeah, I think that's all what comes to my mind first, but I'm open to questions. So please ask me anything. I'll try to answer. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Dimitri, for sharing. And yes, I didn't mention at the beginning, but if you have any question, put them on the chat, and then if I don't get to them right away, we'll take some time at the end to kind of go through those questions, and of course, either for myself or for Dimitri. But just kind of snowballing on what Dimitri was saying, the first time I bought a house in the U.S., I had one thing that I'd never had before. It was never, ever, ever. I had a backyard. I had grass. I could walk in my backyard because where I grew up in France, it was very urban. So we had a balcony. It was more of a bigger apartment, but it was so nice to have grass to run around. And people never really understood. They were like, why the Midwest? I said, well, I have grass. I can just sit in my backyard and relax. And but yeah, so thank you, Dimitri, for sharing your experience. I'm gonna continue the slides here, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna continue a road trip. So now we kind of saw the Midwest, and now we're gonna continue the ride. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take you to Missouri. All right, so now we've driven, as Dimitri was saying, we've done our little road trip, and we've landed in the state of Missouri. So we're getting a little bit closer to where we are. So something that's interesting about Missouri is even though Kansas City and St. Louis are two major cities in the state, none of them are the capital of Missouri. Jefferson City is the capital of Missouri. It is a little bit more south Missouri. So if you look at the map, it's close to the center. But it's important to know. The largest city in Missouri is Kansas City. Right now in Missouri, we have about 6 million people. So it is a big state, but because it is a big state also in terms of size, the people are really spread out. There's very little area where it's just people on top of each other. When we look at the biggest city, which is Kansas City, and I will be talking a little bit more, you'll kind of see where the breakdown of the population is. Another fun fact is in Missouri, we have 527,915 students, we have a lot of students in Missouri. It's a very, very attractive state for students in general, international and U.S. students. Again, because education is cheap. Education goes with the cost of living. Another fun fact about Missouri is we have the most touching states. The state of Missouri touches 8 states: Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas. So you have a big, I mean, when you talk about the Midwest, I mean, we really touch a lot of states in the Midwest, and we even touch states that aren't in the Midwest. I mentioned Kentucky and Tennessee and Arkansas. Those states are part of the South of the US. So it's very interesting because Missouri is the lowest, the most southern state in the Midwest. So we get a little bit of both culture. We get the country culture, country music, but we also get the more jazz from Kansas City, and we get a little bit of the North culture from Minnesota and the Dakotas and Nebraska. So it's very interesting in Missouri, the kind of culture we get. If you've watched the show Ozarks on Netflix, it is inspired by Missouri. It is South Missouri, around a city called Springfield, but it is the largest lake in the state of Missouri, the Lake of the Ozarks. Another fun fact is we also have a lake after him, but Harry Truman, the 33rd president of the U.S., was born in the Kansas City area. And also Eminem, the rapper, was born in St. Joseph, Missouri. Even though he's got a movie that's called 8 Mile that's in Michigan, he only moved to Michigan when he was, I think, 5 or 6 years old, but he spent the first 6 years of his life in Missouri. And it's actually only 35 minutes away from the university. So there's actually a place that's dedicated to him. And another thing that's important in Missouri is the waterways. So the Missouri River runs through Missouri, and it's actually a affluent of the Mississippi. So in St. Louis, this is where the Mississippi and the Missouri River meets. And Missouri, in the language Missouris, which is a tribe, a Sioux Indian tribe, means wooden canoe people. So it really shows that, the waterways is something that's very important for us. In Missouri, we're the home of Lewis and Clark, which are two people that kind of they rode the Mississippi, and then they ended up in St. Louis. They were a trader. They traded pelt, so animal skin. And then one day they just got on a boat, and then they went up the Missouri River, and then they ended up in Kansas City, and they continued their journey. So it's a city that has been rocked by European traders. So a lot of European influence in Missouri, which is very comfortable because sometimes you'll travel to the States and then you end up in a German town or a Dutch town or a French town. And so it's very interesting just kind of driving, again, talking about those road trips, driving to the States and kind of experiencing the different culture. And finally, who knew, but the state desert in Missouri is the ice cream cone. So who knew that Missouri created the ice cream cone? Something as simple as that. But and we do have a lot of creamery due to our dairy farmer. So if you come to Missouri, I'm sure you'll get to experience the beautiful ice cream cone. All right, so I will share the slide so that you can have it. It looks like I can't play the video, but there's a beautiful video about Missouri and kind of what Missouri has to offer. But if you go on visitmo.com, which is kind of our tourist website, the Department of Tourism, you'll be able to see this video and kind of see what I was talking about when I talk about nature, waterways, but also fun. All right, so now we continue our journey, our little drive around the Midwest. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a pit stop in Kansas City. So if Dimitri and myself had to meet up, I think we would meet up in Kansas City. I think that would be a midpoint between our two cities. And Kansas City is a very exciting city. I've lived in Kansas City for 7 years, and there's a lot of things to do in Kansas City. This is where you kind of find that diversity. Where I live right now in Maryville and in Hutchinson, you'll find some diversity. You might find some restaurants, but once you start merging into Kansas City, this is where you really find that urban diversity. So the first thing that I'm going to mention, I can't pass it, but Kansas City is the home of the Chiefs, which is the 2022 and 2023 Super Bowl champions. I'm sure you've heard or you've seen on TV or you've seen on social media Patrick Mahomes, which is the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. But he's probably the biggest celebrity we have right now in Kansas City. But you may have heard of Taylor Swift, who's dating one of the football players. So again, we have a lot of attraction around the Kansas City Chiefs. It makes it really dynamic. So it's something to, once you're in Kansas City, I strongly invite you to attend or at least be part of this football culture. A second fun fact is actually Kansas City is the city of fountains. It's the second city with the most fountain in the world beyond Rome. So again, something that people don't always know about Kansas City, but a lot of urban beauty, a lot of statues, a lot of fountains, a lot of things to see in Kansas City. Another thing that I love about Kansas City is the fact that it's a young city. The median age is only 35 years old. Kansas City is a young city. So when you do things, the nightlife, the lifestyle, a lot of fun things, a lot of street markets, a lot of activities. Kansas City is also big into basketball because of the Kansas basketball and Missouri basketball. But we also home of the NAIA March Madness, one of the basketball tournament. So again, a lot of things to do for young people in Kansas City. Kansas City itself represents about 500,000 people. But once you put the suburb of Kansas City, you reach about just 1 million people. The most common origin for immigrants are Mexico, India, and China. And 8% of the population of Kansas City is actually born outside of the U.S. So as Dimitri was saying, it is slightly limited as far as the diversity, but I think it's good to have, at least some kind of diversity that creates, a little bit of food. We have festivals that you can attend. We also have a very big Irish community in Kansas City. So you can do, St. Patrick's Day and all these little Irish celebration. So a lot of fun things to do in Kansas City. Something that we're looking forward to, and Dimitri and I were actually part of a group, and one of the member of the group is actually part of the committee for the 2026 Soccer World Cup. So this is something that, if you decide to pursue your education in Kansas, in the Midwest or closer to Kansas City will be a receiving city. So you might be aware it's going to be Canada, U.S., and Mexico, and then within those three countries, you will have receiving cities. And Kansas City is going to be both a receiving city for games, but also for nations. So we'll have nations living in Kansas City during the World Cup. So that could create some opportunity as far as like linguists and just tourism in general. Kansas City is the world capital of barbecue. So I'm sure Dimitri can attest, but barbecue in Kansas City is beyond good. Beyond good. Nothing I've ever had before moving to the Midwest. We always say in Kansas City, low and slow, low temperature for a long time. So which creates a juicy. It's also a dry rub. So it's not a wet barbecue. It's always a dry barbecue, but then you have the barbecue sauce that goes with it. So this is something I've learned to love, and it didn't take very long. But we have over 100 barbecue restaurants just in Kansas City. So there's always different, some people have their preference, Jack Stack or Q39 or Kansas City Joe's or Gates. But again, I strongly invite you, if you're ever in Kansas City, to experience barbecue. Another fun fact is that Arrowhead Stadium, which is where the Kansas City Chiefs play, is the loudest stadium in the world with 142.2 decibel at the highest peak of a football game. So again, I'm talking about the experience and the fun. This is something to see. And finally, Walt Disney opened his first studio in Kansas City. So another tradition, when we talk about Walt Disney in the U.S., it is something to see. Couple pictures that I want to show you. So if you see here the right picture, the bigger one, there's a blue square, and the blue square kind of represents Kansas City. So even though it's called Kansas City, it doesn't mean that it is in Kansas. So part of it is in Kansas. State line actually cuts Kansas City. But we're looking at about 95% in Missouri and about 5% in Kansas. But it's funny because on the Kansas side there's some very notable things, and then in the Missouri side there's some very notable things as well. So it's very interesting to talk about KCK, which is Kansas City, Kansas, and KCMO, which is Kansas City, Missouri. The bottom picture is one of the fountain that's located on the plaza, which is one of the most famous area of Kansas City. And here in the center, you kind of have a picture of downtown, and then our Union Station, which is kind of the heart of the downtown area. And the Huffington Post named Kansas City the coolest city in America. So again, this is a lot of hype around Kansas City. Those are things that have happened post-COVID. So it's really showing that the kind of dynamic that we currently have in Kansas City. All right, so jumping in, we're going to go back into a little car, continuing that road trip. And let me tell you that we're almost there. So now we've kind of explored the Midwest. We've explored Missouri. We've explored Kansas City. But what we're going to do is we're going to pick up some students along the way. So Dimitri mentioned it. I could have mentioned it as well. Public transportation is not common. You can find it in Kansas City. There's a bus system. There's also a streetcar that's going to be able, you're going to be able to utilize. But once you step out of the city, once you leave the city, it's kind of hard to have that public transportation. So as part of the Northwest experience, we've created a shuttle service, kind of a public transportation that our students can use that starts at the airport. So Kansas City Airport is the closest airport to the university. It's also one of the biggest airports in the Midwest. And I'm not comparing it to maybe Chicago or Minneapolis or Cleveland, but it is called a regional airport, even though it is an international airport. Right now, there's no direct flight to Europe. This is more of an airport that's going to connect Canada, Mexico, some of the Caribbean. But it is ultimately an international airport. You kind of see the map here. We call it the roundabout of the airport of the U.S. because you can get a direct flight to pretty much any major city in the U.S., connecting the west to the east. So again, a lot of flights available if you wish to travel around the Midwest or around the U.S. So the Kansas City Airport is located about 70 miles south of the campus, so about 1 hour. So the students are picked up for free at the airport. So this is why I'm picking up students today on this little journey, because we have a shuttle that's actually going to drive them to the airport when they arrive on campus. So you always have to look, we say you have to look for the Northwest booth when you arrive, because we do a lot of community work with the airport. And you can see on this little picture, this is the entrance of the airport. And when we receive the students, they always want to welcome our students. So we always put on the screen at the airport, and we have a little table. We have a little welcome center where we're going to welcome the students with food and water. So again, very welcoming environment as soon as you arrive at the airport. So when we talk about support, I don't think there's, a better way we could do it. Is just, as soon as you pick up your suitcase, you'll see us, you'll get welcomed by the university. And Travel Awaits, which is a website that you can, kind of find some ins and outs about cities, actually voted Kansas City Airport as one of the best, as the best airport in the U.S. because of the food, because of the easy access, because of the way, it's not one of those major airports when you have to arrive 3-4 hours before your flight. It is a very comfortable airport. There's not much line. It's very streamlined. And we really appreciate it. I really appreciate, and I'm sure Dimitri, if he travels from Kansas City, appreciates it as well, because it makes it so easy to travel in and out of Kansas City. All right, so now we've got our students, and we're going to head for 1 more hour north. And we're going to start seeing it in the background. We're getting closer and closer to the university. And there you go. So we've traveled 1 hour north of the airport, and now I want to officially welcome you to Northwest Missouri State University. We've made it to our campus. So just as a reminder to show you where we are, so we are located in the city of Maryville. Maryville, we call it the middle of everywhere, because when we talk about the Midwest, we are located in the northwest part of the Missouri, the state of Missouri, but we're located 15 minutes away from Iowa, 35 minutes away from Nebraska, and 40 minutes away from Kansas. So we are officially the middle of everywhere. Something about the community, and Dimitri touched it a little bit when he was talking about Hutchinson, but we're in a very similar environment. It's a smaller community, so it makes it very safe because the community is so engaged in the university, and we do a lot of community outreach program. We have both a city police and a university police. So all these little initiatives that we've done with the city of Maryville have actually helped us get this little badge that we have on this presentation. We're the safest college campus in the state of Missouri. So this is something that we're very proud of. When you travel to the U.S. and you're not sure where you're going, well, I mean, you're going to arrive in this community that's just amazing. So many fun people, so many things to do. There's always festivals happening, and the community is going to be very welcoming of international students. So now what I'm going to do is the next step when you arrive on campus, I'm going to take you to your room. But let me see if I'm going to be able to do it this way for this presentation. Okay, perfect. So normally on this presentation, when I do it on PowerPoint, I can click on things because it always takes you back to your room. This is kind of the setup of your room. But the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm able to access those slides. So I'm going to talk a little bit about your time at Northwest. So we have about 120 undergraduate majors, so bachelor's degree. In the US, there are 4 years degree. And then I'm going to talk, I could talk about all of them, but just for a matter of time, I'm going to talk about the most popular. So as I was talking a bit about when we talk about employment in the Midwest, IT is big. Well, on campus, our undergraduate program in computer science, cybersecurity, data science, those are really, really popular programs just because of the employability once you graduate the university here in the Midwest. But we also have a lot of students studying business, agriculture, communication, political science, and ultimately natural science, just because of our natural beauty here in the Midwest. So that includes chemistry, biology, nanoscience. So all these programs are available on campus. I'd be more than happy to pass the full list of programs available toward the end. We also have five graduate programs, 2 in computer science and data science. We're also going to have biology, English, applied health, and the newest addition is going to be our Master of Science in Data Science. That is one that we've been waiting for a long time. We have about 150 clubs and organizations on campus, so a lot of things to do. I think studying in the US beyond the academic piece is also the social piece. It's being able to meet people from all over the world on campus. We have about 40 countries represented. We have students from pretty much everywhere in the world. At least the full world is represented. We also have academic advising, writing center. So if you need any kind of support as far as academic, you can always reach out. Those are free services to our students. We also have a wellness service. Here in the US, healthcare is a little bit complicated. It's a little bit more expensive than what you can find maybe at home or in Europe. So what we've decided to do is we actually created a wellness center on campus where our students can receive free service as far as like checkups or maybe mental counseling if they have any kind of symptoms of homesickness or anything like this. So this is something that is very helpful to our students. To kind of touch up on what Dimitri was saying about public transportation, it is true that the city of Maryville doesn't have public transportation. So as a public university in the Midwest, we've actually took a step further and we created public transportation. So we actually have a bus system around campus, that's going to travel not only around campus, but that's going to go to the grocery store, that's going to go to public offices around the city, that's going to go to local restaurants. So this shuttle service that we have on campus is very similar to what you would find at home as like your bus route. And this bus route is free. So you can just jump in, jump out wherever you need to go around the city. So that way you don't have to have a car when you're in Maryville. And as I was mentioning when we talked about the airport, we also have the shuttle service that goes to the airport. So you can travel all around Maryville. You can go to the airport, which is going to be able to is going to allow you to travel around the Midwest, around the U.S. And when you come back to Kansas City, we'll pick you up again. So again, you really have that mobility that you wouldn't be able to find, in smaller area. So this is something that we created, and again, it is a free service for students. And finally, it's important for you to stay healthy. I think working out in the U.S. is a big part of the culture. Staying fit and going to the gym. So we do have a massive fitness center on campus. So not only for working out, but also for playing sports, badminton, basketball, volleyball, racquetball. So all these activities are free for students and are available on campus. So I'm going to talk a little bit about housing. We have multiple types of housing on campus, whether it is kind of your traditional freshman dorms, which is going to be your 2-bed, 2-desk, 2 closets, so that way you're going to have your roommate. But we also have bigger rooms. We have apartments. So again, based on what you're looking for, based on your need, we're going to be able to accommodate you during the housing process after you've completed the admission. And when we talk about the dining option, we also have a little bit of a diverse food on campus. We have, of course, our main cafeteria, which is called our Bearcat Bites, which is going to be multiple station, diverse station, international food, and that changes daily, so that way you can always have that diversity in your food. But we also have some fast food options. We have Chick-fil-A, Buffalo Wild Wings, Qdoba, McAllister. So Chick-fil-A is like a chicken franchise. They serve chicken burgers, and they're very famous in the U.S. for their chicken. Buffalo Wild Wings is also a chicken, more of a dining sit-down for chicken wings, but they also have amazing burgers. Qdoba is kind of like a South American flair to, also known as Chipotle. I mean, it's kind of comparable to Chipotle. You can have, Tex-Mex. And McAllister is the equivalent of Subway, also very famous. They're very famous for their sweet tea, which is delicious if you ask me. But and we also have a Starbucks location on campus. So again, a lot of things for you to eat, experience, see. So when we talk about the U.S. experience, you always think about athletic. I mentioned it when I was talking about Kansas City, about the Chiefs, about basketball. Well, on campus, it's pretty much the same as far as the culture, except we're talking no longer professional. We're talking about college athletes. And I apologize, there's a typo on my slide. It's not the NAIA, it's the NCAA Division II, part of the MIA conference. So you can see the logo at the top. I'm not sure whether it corrected it or... So we are known as the Bearcats. This is our mascot. We have 6 men's sports, so including basketball, football, track and field, baseball, and 8 women's sports. When we look at the MIA and the NCAA Division II, so the conference and the national level, we have a long-lasting tradition of victory. You can see I put a picture at the very bottom left of Trevor Hutchins. He's the most recent NBA player that was drafted from Northwest. He plays for the Houston Rockets. And all of our sporting events are free for students. So if you wanted to go to a basketball game, or if you wanted to go to a U.S. football game, a women's soccer game, a tennis game, all this is included in the cost of attendance. So you wouldn't have to pay any more to attend those events. So on the athletic, we also have another piece that's what we call the sports club. This is more based on the organization. It's more of a student-led organization, but you will be able to do esports, which is video games, bowling, golf, soccer, We also have archery. We have a lot of things on campus that you can do. It is still organized practice and games. So you're still going to be able to travel to local university or local clubs to compete, but you're just not going to be part of the NCAA. It is completely independent. It is a great way for students to be involved. And again, it is free of charge. We really want the students to get out of their bedrooms and get involved and make friends. So this is why we have removed the financial barrier to these clubs. So now I'm going to dive into the cost of attendance, because this is always the big question about the US is how much does it cost for me to go study in the US? Well, so we're going to break it into two different parts. So first is going to be the cost of attendance, what we call the sticker price. This is similar to when you buy a car. There's a price on the car, but then once you start talking to the car dealership, you can have rebates, and this is what the scholarships are. So the main cost of attendance, I've broken down into the 4 categories. So the first is going to be the tuition and fees, which is going to be around $20,000. Tuition meaning the school, fees meaning everything else. It's when we were talking about free for students, it is part of the fees. When you talk about all the activities, everything on campus, it is part of the fees. So it makes it about $20,000. Then your room on campus is going to be around $7,000 on average, and these costs are per year. Then you're going to have the meal plan. I've put this one, the meal plan, the unlimited meal plan, which is going to be 21 meals per week. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day of the week. And you're also going to receive $200 per semester at our fast food location. So if you wanted Starbucks in the morning, you can use that $200. You don't have to use your own money. So it is part of the meal plan. It makes it a little bit easier for students to budget. And finally, we have a health insurance that's going to be $1,543. It is a very inclusive health insurance, as I was talking a little bit earlier. Healthcare in the U.S. is expensive, so with the wellness center here on campus, we've built kind of this really interesting package. Students don't have to pay for going to a doctor, and even if they had to go to a doctor in Maryville, it would only cost you $20, which would be an administrative fee. So very, very interesting, and there's no deductible for students, so $0 deductible. So which makes a total cost of attendance about $33,000 per year, everything included. So this is something that you're going to hear me say a lot, is everything included. That you shouldn't have to put any more money onto this amount, because we've designed the campus for you to have everything on campus. So on the scholarship piece, we have 2 scholarships available for students. So and these are students for a scholarship for undergraduate students. So if you're interested in studying at a bachelor's level, and you meet the 2.75 GPA, you're gonna qualify for the first scholarship, which is going to be $7,516. So this is called the NIAS, Northwest International Achievement Scholarship. The second scholarship that you're going to qualify for is going to be between $1,000 to $6,000, and this is going to be a GPA and SAT, knowing that the SAT is optional. So I put this little picture on the right side, so that way you can have a quick understanding. So on the first line here, this is going to be your GPA, and then on the left side here is going to be your SAT score. So if you take the GPA and you got the very bottom, this is where you see for no SAT. I apologize, the picture is a little small, but with a 2.75 GPA and no SAT, you'll qualify for $1,000. If you increase your GPA, you'll go left, still with no SAT, so 1,000, then you'll go 1,500, all the way to 3,000 if you have a 4.0 GPA or 3.95 and above. If you were to take the SAT test, you will just go up based on your score. So I'm going to take our average. Usually our students are around 1,130, a GPA of about 3.25. So they will qualify for a scholarship of $3,000 just by taking the SAT and their GPA. This scholarship is stackable. So if you have this scholarship, you will add it to the 7,516, which will make you a scholarship of about, on average, we'll say 9,000, 10,000 if you take the SAT. Which will make the cost of attendance per year $23,000, $22,000, $23,000 based on your scholarship. So this is again, a scholarship that is for undergraduate students. We also have students for, if they, for example, started the university in Ukraine or somewhere else in the world and wanted to continue their university in the US, we also have what we call transfer scholarship. They will still qualify for the Northwest International Achievement Scholarship based on their GPA. But then if they have these GPA, so between 3.0 and 3.29, or 3.3 and 3.49 and 3.5 and 4, you can add this amount to your scholarship. So ultimately, you get this similar scholarship. I wanted to mention that our graduate students, if you're interested in pursuing graduate studies in Northwest Missouri State University, our graduate programs are already in the top 10% of the most affordable program in the US. So we do not have any scholarship for graduate studies. This is why there's no scholarship that you see on it. All right, so now we jump into the admission requirements. I'm not going to take too much of your time on this because I'm sure you've attended or you've already done some research, but we have really streamlined the process of admission. We're only going to need a couple things from you. So the first thing that we're going to need you is to complete the online application, which is going to be affiliated with a fee of $75. We're going to need your copy of your passport, your high school transcript, and we actually accept students based on an official transcript. If you're transfer students, we will need the official transcript so we can transfer those credits. But for if you're an undergraduate student coming from high school, you can be accepted based on the unofficial transcript, and then you'll just bring the official copy when you come with you. We will need an English proficiency test. So whether it is the TOEFL with a score of 61, IELTS 5.5, Duolingo English test 95. I put the Duolingo English test logo here because we actually have an agreement with Duolingo. We do a lot of work with them. So if you're interested in studying at Northwest and you haven't taken a English proficiency test, I will pay for your test. I will send you via your email address a link so you can take the Duolingo test for free. So once you've taken once you've met the admission requirements, we will kind of go into the financial documents. So this is part of even though we call it part of the admission process, it doesn't grant you admission at the university. It is just a requirement that we have to do for your visa application at the US Embassy. And they will require 2 documents. The first one is a statement of support, which is a document that we'll send you by email when you get accepted to the university. And it's just it helps us understand the breakdown of how you're going to be handling the payment, whether you have a sponsor, whether it's mom and dad, uncle, grandma, grandpa, whoever's, or maybe a company that's going to help you go to the US. So this is a very simple document. And the financial proof is going to be kind of the backup. So you've mentioned that, for example, we'll say mom and dad were paying for your studies in the US. Well, the financial proof is actually going to be a bank letter or an account statement that's going to prove that mom and dad can actually support you in your effort to go in the US when you go to the US Embassy. I did put it on there. The SAT is optional. So if you're not taking the SAT, it's just you just don't qualify for as much scholarship, but it's not going to affect your admission to the university. There's no personal statement or essay, no letter of recommendation. And we also have something that is very appealing. We have no enrollment deposit. The first payment is due on the first day of school. So you can come to the US and not pay $1 to Northwest. You'll start the payment the first day of school. All right. And I was talking about this all-inclusive model, where you don't pay anything else. Well, we went a little bit further in that step. The textbooks and a laptop are included in the cost of attendance. So when you come to Northwest, based on the classes that you'll be taking, you won't have to pay for your textbooks. So this is a huge chunk in US education. Textbooks are very expensive in the US, but for us, they'll be included in that cost. So when I was talking about the $23,000 or $22,000 based on your scholarship, or even less if you get a bigger SAT score and a higher GPA, you won't have to pay a dime more. The only things that aren't included in the cost of attendance are airfare, visa fee, and your personal spending in the US. The rest is included in the cost of attendance. Anything that you can find on campus, as far as club, organization, textbooks, gym, library, writing center, wellness center. So all this is included in the cost. You wouldn't have to spend any more money when you're on campus. And then finally, for the last slide, I wanted to give you an opportunity to connect. So whether it is on our website, you can find, this is where you'll find the application online. We're not part of the Common App. So once you go on the website, you'll find the application link. You can also follow us on Instagram, which is NW_International Engagement. You'll find some information about the campus, about the students, about the scholarship, about really, kind of everything I talked about today. You'll find on this page. And finally, you can email me directly. So this is something that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. If you're interested in knowing more, you can email me directly, and I can do the similar presentation with you one-on-one. We can, and maybe a little bit more focus on the university or your major. I can also connect you with the faculty if you're interested in a certain program. So that way you can receive the additional knowledge, and you can make your decision based on what you're looking for. So I have taken an hour and 6 minutes of your time. I'm so sorry. I went 6 minutes over of my goal, but it was super nice. I always love supporting those students, and especially our students from Ukraine. We do have students from Ukraine on campus. So it is amazing to be able to connect. I hope I get to see you in person one day. But thank you, Education USA Ukraine. Thank you, Victoria, for your support. Thank you, Dimitri, for supporting my efforts and supporting the students as well.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for such an informative presentation. I learned so much myself, and thank you, Dmitro, for coming here today and for sharing your story and your experiences in the United States. I would just like to encourage our lovely viewers at home, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the comments. You can always also reach out to me directly or sign up for a free consultation with one of our lovely advisors at Education USA and learn more about the application process to the US. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about the Northwest Missouri State University, I'll be sure to reach out to Thomas and get first-hand information and any details that you might be interested in. So we have a question from Anastasia. Anastasia is wondering, please, could you tell me more in detail about the financial statement requirements?
Yeah, so the financial statement, and I'm going to talk about this as a general, not so much for Northwest, but every school in the US that's going to require you to have a visa is going to ask you for some financial documents. So for us, it's only a 2-document process. So the first one is the statement of support. The statement of support is a document that's going to list, it's going to ask you really 3 questions. Who's paying? Who's receiving the money? And how much? So this document is really going to be a very simple document, but it helps us understand, how you're going to be supported when you're in the U.S. It also helps the U.S. Embassy when you apply for a visa to say, hey, it's good to go to the U.S., but if you don't have any money, you're not going to be able to go to school. You're not going to. So this is kind of why this requirement is based on. The financial document that you're going to have to provide to support the statement of support can be a bank letter. So you can go to your bank and talk to your bank advisor and say, I'm planning to go to the US. I just need to prove that my mom and dad or my grandma and grandpa, my sponsor, can pay for the amount that I listed. So for example, if we talked about the $22,000, $23,000 amount, so they will just have to prove $22,000 on a bank account available for you to be able to use that money. Something to know as well is my parents didn't have $22,000 on their bank account when they sent me to the US. So what we did is we actually used different sponsor. I used my mom and dad for half and my grandparents for half. So I was able to receive different sponsor, but all I had to do was fill out one statement on support for my parents, one statement of support for my grandparents, one bank statement for my parents, and one bank statement for my grandparents. That way, it were matching the documents. When I went to the embassy, I showed all the documents, and they were like, okay, cool, that makes sense. The expectation is not one person to have to pay for everything. The expectation is just you to have support, financial support. So this is something that, a lot of students stress about the financial documents when you talk about, going to the embassy. The embassy is not here to judge you based on your financial capabilities. We know it. It's kind of awareness in the world. People have money, people have less money. It's just, we have middle class, we have upper class. So this is okay. The US Embassy completely understands that. They just want to know that you have a plan, the plan of how you're going to support yourself in the US for education and living expenses. They want to see that you're able to buy a plane ticket. They want to see that you're able to buy food or whatever you need in the US. So this is kind of, I hope I didn't go too far into the detail on the financial statements, but this is kind of what it is for. A support statement is for you to be able to explain how you're going to be paying for it. And the financial documents, the bank statement is going to prove that you have that capability on what you wrote on the financial statement.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for such an informative answer and for some great tips and advice. We have a follow-up question from Anastasia, who's just making sure. So should it be a statement about my sponsor's account, or should it be signed in the document that the money is specifically for first name, last name, undergraduate program in this university?
Yeah, so what we've done actually is the document that we're going to send you as like a blurb. So it's going to say, the amount of money, like this amount is for, because the student is seeking undergraduate studies at Northwest in the program of. So it's going to be, everything is designed. When you get this document, you just have to fill out 3 things, and it's just going to be a signature at the end, and it's done. But we've designed the documents for you to take it to your bank, to take it to the embassy. And we've never had issues with these documents. It's common practice in the field of international education, or at least coming to the US.
Thank you so much for such a helpful answer, and thank you, Anastasia, for reaching out. If you have any more questions about the requirements and the documents you need to put together for a student visa, please once again feel free to reach out to our lovely advisors and sign up for a consultation. We'll be happy to guide you through the process and answer any questions you may have.
And if I can add something with the financial, you can also use loan. I don't know if you have access to loans based on your, not everybody does, but it is another option to look into. And loans are actually recognized by the US Embassy as a financial support. So if you're planning on using loans to pay for some of your studies, local loans, or maybe loans that you have access to your family, or we actually have a process that we can help you. We can submit some documents for you, so that way you can take that to your bank, so that way they have an understanding of what's coming. And but that comes in like the second part of the admission process. The first part is to complete the admission. This is kind of where we build that relationship between you and the university. And then when it comes time to do the financial documents, we will send you everything by email. It's really, the support is nonstop. We never expect you to do it by yourself. We're always going to provide you. And I see that you share the example. I don't have any way of sharing example, but again, I'm sure the advisor within Education USA will be able to share that with you.
Thank you so much for your answer. And once again, Anastasia, please do not hesitate to reach out. And if you'd like, you can always sign up for a free consultation and get all the answers to your questions. And of course, get an in-depth review of all the documents you need based on the university you're applying to and the documents they have provided you with. So thank you for being so active, and please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help you or direct you to one of my colleagues as well. So another question I actually often get asked by students would be one about opportunities to work on campus. So I was wondering, are there any chances for students to work at the Northwest Missouri State University?
Yeah, so this is a great question. This is I don't put it in my slide because this is usually a question I get in the chat. But yes, so Northwest is very supportive of student employment. So the way we approach education here at Northwest is called profession-based learning. So profession-based learning means that we always want the students to have kind of that understanding of what it means to be a professional in the field. So what we do at Northwest, we have about 1,200 jobs on campus, but this is not only at Northwest. This is something that, student employment is something that is big in the US because it's going to help you pay for some of your study. It's going to help you at least contribute to your study. One of the regulations that is in the US is students can work 20 hours per week on campus. You can start on the first day. The day you arrive, the first day of class, you can start working. There's no question. There's no time you have to wait. But you're limited on the number of hours per week. And you're limited to the location, which is the campus. So for us, we've designed to where we have a lot of jobs for international students because it can also be a challenge. When we talk about jobs in the US, we talk about competitiveness. You have to apply, you have to present yourself, you have to create a resume. So we do actually have an office that's called Career Services that's going to be able to put that together. We're not going to expect you to know everything about the employment process in the US. So we're going to be able to provide you that resource to be employable. This is a term that you'll hear a lot when you come to the university, is employability. What makes you different? How can you market yourself as a worker? And Dimitri kind of touched it. He had skills. He spoke Ukrainian. He spoke Russian. So we do have some work in my office, for example, working with international students, and we do need linguists. So it's all these little tools that you're going to have, that you're going to bring with you, that are going to make you employable. This is going to be, when I talk about the employment on campus, it's valid for the 4 years during your time in the US. And even if you continue at the graduate level and you decide to spend 6 years in the US for school, this is going to be always the case. 20 hours per week on campus, you're okay to work. After that, you're going to have some other opportunity. I think this is good for a different maybe video, because it's it could take another hour talking about the opportunity that you're going to have off campus, but as a benefit of your F1 study. So you won't be able to get the work off campus if you don't come under F1 students. But I'm sure you may have heard of CPT and OPT, but that I'm going to transfer back to the Education USA advisors to introduce you to that, because it is something that would take a little bit longer as far as process.
Thank you so much for such an encouraging answer. And we've got another question from a student who's wondering, well, first of all, thank you so much for such a great presentation. My question is, do you provide application waivers?
So yes and no. So what we do is we do some fun activities on campus. And like, for example, we just had a month we did during March Madness, which is the basketball time here, we had some application waiver. So yes, we do have some application waiver possible. It's not something that we can, they're not meal ticket, it's not something that we pass out often, but if you're always interested about an application waiver, you can email us. There's no guarantees, but again, I think it's a valid question. And if you have something that's preventing you from paying the application, we always, just like this, we're listening to your question. We're also people behind the computer. So we understand that, we are all facing things. The one thing that I'm going to give you, and this is kind of my advice, whether you come to Northwest, whether you choose a different university, the application fee is not so much us wanting to trick you or us wanting to put you in a financial hole. But you also have to think that for Northwest, because we don't have any enrollment deposit, we never know who's committed to coming to Northwest. So this, it's minimal. When you look at, $22,000 per year to study at Northwest, $75. So it is a small financial commitment that's going to speak volume about your commitment to the university. Okay, I'm really committed. I want to go. This is something that I want to do in my future because this is going to change my life. And some students are arguing about the $75, but look at it in perspective. We're paying for Duolingo. We're okay to do all these initiatives and doing all this, but you also have to show us that you're committed to the university. And I think this $75 is kind of this commitment, this initial commitment saying Northwest is where I want to be.
Thank you so much for some great words of encouragement and for a fantastic presentation. I think I speak for all of our students here in the audience today when I say that I greatly enjoyed it, and I feel like gained so much insight into the Midwest and of course into Northwest Missouri State University. It has been such a pleasure to have both you and Metro here with us today, and I would just like to encourage our lovely students at home to please not hesitate to, well, first of all, research the universities studies that you're interested in, and keep in mind the region and some of the advantages it can offer you, as it can be a great benefit once you start your studies. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about Northwest Missouri State University, I'd be happy to provide all the resources that Thomas has kindly shared with us, and of course help you on this journey or connect you with a representative directly. So thank you so much, and well, I encourage you on your journey to US study. Keep believing in yourself, keep persevering, and you will make this dream a reality. Stay safe and stay with Education USA. We'd love to see you next week for our presentation. And of course, keep believing in yourself and you will achieve your dream. Goodbye, stay safe, and stay with Education USA.